Hey guys, Aaron Dorr here with the Missouri Firearms Coalition. It's always an honor to be joined by Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey talking about Joe Biden's war on our freedom, the Second Amendment, and everything in between. He is our guest today. Mr. AG, thank you for your time today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on and covering these really important issues.
So the big question for all of our members, and they're super excited now, we actually have a court date. February 16 is the head-to-head showdown with your office and gun owners against Joe Biden, the DOJ, over SAPA law. Why do you think this is such a big deal for the Biden White House?
Well, Aaron, this is monumental, and I think it's important to remember a couple of things here. Number one, SAPA is about defending and protecting our Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. That right comes from God, not man. The Constitution exists to protect us from the government, and the government exists to protect our rights. But SAPA also codifies the 10th Amendment non-commandeering doctrine, which essentially stands for the proposition that the federal government is not allowed to come in and commandeer the apparatus of state government to achieve its goals. And really all we've done in SAPA is codify and assert that basic doctrine from the 10th Amendment, and the Department of Justice sued the state of Missouri. They are the aggressors here.
Yes.
Biden's Department of Justice are the ones that can't allow that to happen. They want to commandeer the apparatus of state government to take away our right to keep and bear arms. That's what they're committed to. And that's why defending the Second Amendment Preservation Act is so critical. Obviously,
I think a lot of people initially thought this is all about guns, but your point and all of our point has been this is about much more than the Second Amendment. It's about the idea of state sovereignty. SAPA applies it to our gun rights, but it's about a lot more than just the Second Amendment.
That's exactly right. The Second Amendment is a good hill to die on, and I'll die on that hill every day. But I'll tell you that this is critical across a spectrum of issues. We see it in all sorts of different areas where, for instance, the Biden administration is trying to use the school and reduced lunch program to force a radical transgender ideology, or trying to use the Department of Energy to tell you which appliances you can and can't have in your house. So if we give an inch on any of these issues, the Biden administration will completely take over and will be using the power of the executive agencies to run every aspect of our life. The Second Amendment is just where we've chosen to take a stand and the hill to die on.
It's Missouri after all, so it's always going to come down to the Second Amendment here in Missouri. You know, one of our lawyers told me this, and I was going to ask you this question as well. He said, you know, it's not normal to have a lawsuit like this named United States versus State of Missouri. I'm not a lawyer, but does that name mean something to you and to your team?
Well, we wear it as a badge of honor.
Yeah, exactly.
The Department of Justice is so incensed at the concept of freedom here in Missouri that they would attack the state of Missouri. And think about this for a minute. It's an attack on our gun owners and any law-abiding citizen in the state of Missouri, but it's also an attack on our General Assembly who passed the statute. It's an attack on our governor who signed the law. And by God, the Missouri Attorney General's office, as long as I'm here, is going to stand up and defend it with everything we've got.
I'm going to ask you about the actual oral arguments and some of your thoughts on that in a few moments. But one question keeps coming up. Several months ago, when SAPA was allowed to expire, when the stay from the lower court expired, you asked the Supreme Court of the United States to extend SAPA during this appellate process. SCOTUS declined that. And of course, as you know, the national media and media here in Missouri went wild saying that the Supreme Court has struck down Missouri's SAPA law. My question to you is, was that a merits-based opinion from the Supreme Court, or was it something else? And if not, what was that?
No, it is absolutely not a merits-based decision. And the media is so quick to pile on and try to give Joe Biden a win here. They're the enemies of freedom. And so, of course, they're going to spin the story. This is an administrative stay. That's all it is. All they're saying is pencils down until the court gets a chance to look at it. That's not the court opining on the merits of the case. We're going to have our day in the court, and we anticipate a good outcome at the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. And if we don't get one, we'll take it all the way to the highest court in the land. But we are going to win this case and protect not only Missourians' right to keep and bear arms, but also the sovereignty of the state of Missouri.
Absolutely. So what we keep hearing from the DOJ is this is a supremacy clause violation. So for those who are new to this issue, the short version of SAPA is it simply says that Joe Biden cannot use our cops, our agencies, our state resources to enforce federal gun control laws. And so, of course, we're limiting what Missouri can do. We're not limiting what the feds can do. We're not telling Joe Biden that he can't use his manpower here in Missouri. As a layman, that's how we see it. Do you agree with that? Is there a supremacy clause violation here? What's your response to the DOJ on this?
Yeah, the supremacy clause is a red herring. That's the Department of Justice wants to be the supreme law of the land. That's the problem.
Yes.
They think the supremacy clause means they get to do whatever they want. And that is not true under our constitutional structure under our democratic republic and a system of federalism where the states retain sovereignty. The Supremacy Clause merely stands for the proposition that where there's a conflict between state law and federal law, and the federal law is validly enacted, then the federal law prevails. But that's not what we have here. Again, the anti-commandeering doctrine is codified not only in case law from the United States Supreme Court, but now in statute in the state of Missouri. And there's nothing illegal or violative of the Supremacy Clause when it comes to the anti-commandeering doctrine, or the Supreme Court certainly would not have engineered that doctrine in its decisions from previous years.
So we kind of thought back in 21 when we passed all of this that SAPA law here in Missouri would be a roadmap for red states across the country on a whole host of issues, as we've already talked about. When I see the list of amicus briefs filed against Missouri's SAPA law, I was verifying that our amicus brief got filed in time. And I saw Everytown for Gun Safety, Moms Demand Action, Giffords Law Center, March for Our Lives, all these different entities. Is it pretty obvious to you, too? This is about much more than just Missouri now. We're talking about the vehicle, or certainly a vehicle, to help keep red states free from this White House. Is that how you see this fight playing out as well?
Absolutely. And the fight is critical now more than ever as we see the Biden administration and its army of unelected federal bureaucrats slouching towards authoritarianism and undermining the rule of law. This is a stand worth making now. I'm so proud that Missouri has blazed a trail into battle for others to follow. And the fact that you've got every gun-grabbing anti-freedom group in America out to get us means we're doing the right things for the right reasons.
100%. You already answered this question once, I think, a minute ago. I'm going to ask you one last time. Final question on SAPA. Safe to say, whichever side loses in the 8th, this case is going to be appealed at some point to the Supreme Court?
Well, that's certainly true if we lose, but we don't plan on losing. I anticipate that the Department of Justice is not going to want to take a loss and is not going to let the case go. Again, they are invested. Yeah. They're invested in taking away our freedoms. That's why they sued the state of Missouri.
Right. Final question. You're not going to want to answer it. I know that, but I have to ask you anyway. Timeline on a response. I know you guys will never give a hard date. I get that. What do you think? What's your best guess on a timeline on the response from the 8th Circuit? Any way to guess?
You know, it is so hard to tell. We argued a case in January of 2023, and it took until January of 2024 for us to get a decision. That is definitely on the outside. You know, I anticipate 6 months. Okay. 8 months at the most. But, you know, we're in front of a 3-judge panel at the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. And before you jump to the United States Supreme Court, there is one more shot that could be fired at the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, and that's for the court to ask for a rehearing en banc. And that could happen even if we win, but maybe the court, we lose on one issue but win on 9 others. And so it's a 90% victory. Maybe we still would want the court en banc to relook that. So there's a procedural mechanism that could potentially keep the case at the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals longer. My best guess, 6 to 8 months.
A.G. Bailey, we have heard for the last year and a half now that the crime wave in St. Louis, in Kansas City, and frankly, every blue city in America could be stopped by more gun control. And what we've heard here in Missouri in particular is that there's a gap in the code that the authorities lack the tools they need to deal with youthful offenders. I asked you recently, point blank, is there nothing? Is there nothing in the law here in Missouri that deals with young criminals walking around doing criminal actions in the code? And you said, no, we've got multiple codes that deal with that. Tell our members what you're talking about.
Yeah, don't believe the mainstream media and the anti-gunners lies when they tell you they need more laws. They're not enforcing the laws on the books. And it really boils down to the juvenile code and the juvenile officers. We have a juvenile code in the state of Missouri today that says it's a delinquent act for any juvenile under the age of 18 to be beyond their parents' control or to be associating with individuals that are injurious to the health of the juvenile or the community. So there are sufficient laws on the books now for these juvenile officers to take jurisdiction over juvenile criminals. But we see this time and time again, Aaron, and I know you've talked about this. Certainly you and I have talked about it. The left refuses to enforce the laws on the books, demands more authoritarian, more draconian laws, and then doesn't enforce those either. And so this is kind of a self-perpetuating problem, and we can't let this happen in the state of Missouri.
So I'm going to ask you to kind of break that down a little bit more for our members. I heard 2 different code sections here. One deals with beyond parental control, I believe you said. So in a nutshell, does that mean then if a 17-year-old is walking around downtown STL at 2 o'clock in the morning, his parents want him home, he will not go home, that the court system has the authority to have that person detained or arrested by the juvenile processes to get him or her off the streets? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, Absolutely. The juvenile officers now have the authority to open up a juvenile case against that juvenile and also have the authority to issue orders to the parents to try to help the parents gain control over the juvenile. If they can't, then the juvenile needs to go to the Division of Youth Services. Think about this for a minute, Aaron. What has changed in the state of Missouri? What has changed? Why is this all of a sudden a problem? Well, it's all of a sudden a problem because the juvenile officers are sending less youth to the Division of Youth Services. The state of Missouri has had to shutter DYS facilities in the past years because the courts aren't sending kids to DYS. So the laws exist on the books. They worked for generations, and all of a sudden the JOs have stopped using them. And now the juveniles are suddenly becoming a problem. So we have sufficient tools on the books. We need the juvenile officers to step up and the courts to do their jobs and send the kids to DYS if they're beyond parental control.
So for our members, we've thought for years, and we're never gonna stop thinking this way, that at the end of the day, gun control, of course, is a failure. It will not stop violent crime. For our members, their thought is very simple. The problem in St. Louis, Kansas City, and every other blue city in America right now, nothing to do with guns. It's about a culture that has taught kids that there basically is no right and wrong, that we have broken homes, we have failing schools, we have prosecutors who oftentimes won't prosecute. And this problem is far deeper, and it's not going to be stopped by passing more gun control. Is that your assessment as well?
If they're not enforcing the laws that are on the books today, what good are more laws going to do?
Yeah.
And we need to go after criminals, not law-abiding citizens. I'm so sick and tired of politicians who think it's expedient to say, oh, well, if we just had more gun control, if we just kind of took this away or took that away, why do you need this or why do you need that? Why are we asking that kind of question when it comes to a constitutional right given to us by God, not man? Nobody asked, well, what if we just curtail a portion of our Fourth Amendment right or our First Amendment right to free speech or free exercise of religion? We don't talk in those terms. So why would we talk like that about the Second Amendment? We have ample tools on the books now. We just need to enforce the laws that are on the books and get the juveniles back under control. They were under control for generations. The tools exist. We just need to use them.
So you made a lot of news last week nationwide about a letter you sent to the Biden White House. I'm going to ask you about that letter, but first explain the backdrop. What are the blue state AGs trying to do right now against our gun rights?
Well, the blue state AGs have kind of opened up a new front in the war against the Second Amendment. And what they've done, instead of taking the issue head on because they continue to lose because they can't get around the fact that we have a constitutional God-given right to keep and bear arms, is that the blue states and the left and the gun grabbers now want to attack from the flank and destroy the ammunition market. And one of the ways they're going to try to do that is by using blue state consumer protection laws to complain about ammunition manufacturers that they claim are supporting mass shootings. Now, you and I know this is absolutely absurd. You can't blame a bullet or a shell casing for the bad decision of one mental health patient. And so that's what we're up against here. And so I'm proud to be leading a coalition of 28 states to fight back and demand that the Biden administration keep its hands off the ammunition industry, especially here in Missouri.
So if I read this letter, this came from New York State, Letitia James, that sweetheart for freedom. And she had it signed by, I think, 19 other blue state attorneys general. And what they're trying to do is ask the White House to basically crack down on Lake City ammo manufacturing, which has a huge presence right here in Missouri, and basically order them by executive power to stop selling 5.56 ammo to the civilian market. Is that more or less what she's asking for?
That is absolutely what she's asking for. She opines that Lake City ammunition is the preferred ammunition of mass shooters. And so she wants the president to demand that government contractors stop selling to the civilian market, which would drive up ammunition costs for avid shooters like you and I, especially, I shoot a lot of 5.56 rounds. And so what we've got to do is we've got to protect the free, fair, and open market from that kind of government intrusion and that kind of abuse by blue state attorneys general who seek to take away our right to keep and bear arms by going after it on the fringes by taking away our ammunition.
I think you're 100% correct. This is the next wave in the war against the Second Amendment. Biden, at least right now today, cannot pass gun control in Congress. We'll see what happens after the midterms. No one knows kind of what's going to happen in November. But yeah, right now he can't pass gun control. But you're right. If he can restrict ammo sales or double the price of ammo sales, it has a similar impact on our right to keep and bear arms. This issue is about 5.56 ammo, but you're a combat veteran. Isn't it true the military shoots more than just 5.56? And wouldn't that logic then extend to say that Biden could say you can't sell 9mm ammo, you can't sell 7.62 ammo, you can't sell 12 gauge ammo?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, this is the Trojan horse to get the enemy behind the wall, and then they're going to use it to build out a beachhead to take away our right to keep and bear arms by owning any kind of ammunition. And they're going to use any tool at their disposal to do it. That's why firing back using this coalition of 28 states that I'm proud to say Missouri is leading is really critical right now. And we're remaining vigilant in this fight to prevent this new front in the war against gun rights from spreading.
So I want to be clear on this. You then drafted a response to Letitia James's letter to the Biden White House, and you then shopped it around, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, to all the red state attorneys general, and you had 100% buy-in then from them. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Always proud to partner with like-minded state attorneys general. It's even better when we can generate the kind of strength in numbers when there are 28 states that are willing to sign on and put the hammer down on this kind of issue and say, no, there's more of us than there are of the other side. And it's critical we speak with one voice on this issue because this is the new front and we're not going to let it go.
Oh, that's excellent. What do you expect for a response from this president?
Well, I do expect that the Biden administration, because they're so adversarial to the right to keep and bear arms, that they may try to take action against Lake City, but we're going to be there to support this Missouri industry and, the lawful ammunition sales that they make. I'll tell you that at the end of the day, they're a government contractor, and government contractors have certain rights under their contracts, and it would be a deprivation of due process were the federal government to come in and amend that contract without some kind of notice and an opportunity to be heard. And so it would be illegal for the Biden administration to do that. So we're going to remain vigilant. We've put them on notice, and we're not going to let this go any further.
Well, guys, to see the actual letter sent by the AG's office, hit the link below to catch that video, guys, and make sure and share it far and wide. Mr. AG, again, thank you for your time and for all you're doing to fight for our gun rights. Always a privilege to talk to you.
Hey, thanks, Aaron. Thanks for having me on.
Take care.